Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Discovery Channel. Tom O'Connor here from, don't be alarmed if you see the computer shaking. That's just the street work going on outside my house. They finally decided to, amazing as it is in the city of New Orleans, put drainage pipes on my street. Not that we ever have any flooding problems here. Right? So
when the levee breaks.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, as always, my partner in mischief, Rachi Messing, coming to us from Tel Aviv again. Rachi,
back in Tel Aviv for a couple months now.
All right.
We had 107 last week. It's
Wow.
getting a little warm here. So
yeah. Ouch.
Yeah, my wife keeps reminding me that we live in a desert, So
yeah. So, but it's a dry heat, right?
Dry heat. Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Makes it perfectly bearable.
Yeah, as I tell people, yeah, so's my oven, but I don't take a vacation there. Yeah. So we are very happy to have with us today two special guests. We're on a multi-guest role here now for the last few weeks, but kind of a co-guest focus on something that the company is doing. So we have with us Rakesh Madhava. Did I get that right?
Nailed it.
All right. Who is the founder and CEO of Nextpoint, Chicago-based e-discovery company, and with him is Andy Greene, who's the and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Andy, the managing partner at Nextpoint Law Group.
That's correct.
Okay, and we're going to discuss what that is and what the concept here is between Nextpoint and the Nextpoint Law Group in just a second. But before we do that, as always, why don't we ask each of you to just take a few minutes to tell us a little bit, tell our listeners, our viewers, our raptly paying attention here viewers, a little bit about yourselves. Where you're from, educational background, how you got sucked into technology, and then even more importantly, legal technology. So, Rakesh, maybe you start us off.
You bet.
I think we're going to do like rock, paper, scissors or something. And,
nah, dealer's choice.
Fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
Well, thanks, Tom and Rachi, for having us on. It's always a thrill to chat with you guys. I am Rakesh Madhava. I'm the founder and CEO of Nextpoint. I started Nextpoint a little bit over 20 years ago now, here in Chicago. And the way I got into legal technology was that I was I actually have, in terms of sort of, legal technology founders, it's a little bit unique because I'm from the law firm space. Like I came from working at a law firm. I was a senior at Northwestern University up in Evanston, and had graduated and was gainfully employed as a produce department employee at the organic grocery store, which I quite enjoyed, stacking apples. But my father was unfortunately not quite as enamored of my career choice at the time.
And Rakesh, what did you graduate degree in?
I have a degree in communication studies and in economics. Cool. And so my dad was doing some IP work with Kirkland Kirkland & Ellis here in Chicago at the time, and he spoke to the partner he was working with, and he said, my son has occasionally made rumblings about potentially wanting to go to law school. Maybe you would talk to him and see if you can get him out of the produce department. So I went down, got my suit on, went down to Kirkland & Ellis, met with Bob Krupke, and he introduced me to what it meant to be a lawyer, and I had no idea who Kirkland & Ellis was, and had no idea what it looked like, and thought about going to law school, but realized that a lot of people I knew were going to law school who I didn't think would make very good lawyers, and but they were going to law school nonetheless. So Kirkland had a project assistant program that Bob kindly covered my resume for, and so I got a job at Kirkland as a project assistant, which is essentially an entry-level paralegal. I worked there for about 3 years, and was, wanted to go to, was thinking about going to law school, but wanted to go to New York and live in New York for a while. So I got a job at Patterson, Belknap, Webb and Tyler, which is a New York-based law firm. Spent a couple of years there working on a number of pharmaceutical cases, and really kind of, at that point had a pretty, I thought, a pretty good understanding of what it meant to be a lawyer and what a legal career would look like, and decided it really wasn't for me. And most of that was because at Patterson, it was like very early in the it was the late 90s. And there was the pharmaceutical antitrust case we were working on was one of the first cases to go on a product called Lexis Counsel Connect, which was like a dial-up repository where all the co-counsel would share all the pleadings, you would share depositions, you would, dial up on your 14.4 modem and start uploading.
Use your little chiclet keyboard to get in
You
there.
got it, exactly. Yeah. And it was like, it was a big deal that I had a modem on my desk at the law firm because nobody else had internet.
You're like, what's that screeching? Why is that screeching?
Exactly.
Wow.
And the law firm, being the smart people they are, recognized that they had, a young person who was interested in technology, and I realized that I was pretty good at it, and that this was a new emerging area of what was going to happen as a transition in the legal industry. And so I decided I didn't want to become a lawyer, but I thought legal technology was really interesting. And so from there, I got a job at FTI Consulting, where I worked in large-scale trial preparation. So consolidating data and demonstrative evidence for, generally they were, mass tort actions. These are very large cases.
Yeah.
And
it's still in the New York office?
No, I moved back, and that's the point. I moved back to Chicago.
All right.
And then around 2000, it was .com boom one, and I left FTI to go to a startup called Hubbard One, which was among the first generation of companies that built law firm websites. And so I spent some time there, basically learning about the internet, learning HTML, CSS, how how web servers are set up, how they interact with databases. And I was like, this looks pretty cool. And I think that there's a real application for this outside of the marketing realm and in the kind of practice, in the practice of law and specifically in litigation. So that's how I started Nextpoint. We started out as a trial consultancy. And so, it is interesting. I don't mind that people refer to us as a e-discovery provider. It's a central part of our business, but we really got started, and it's still a critical part of our business is litigation, is the trial preparation space, and sure that presentation step of the EDRM. And that was our first version of the software. The first version of the software that we released was around deposition transcripts. It was a very specific use case. I thought that there needed to be a better way to manage deposition designations and pretrial exhibits, and that having a common repository that everyone could access would be greatly helpful in preparing witness outlines, opening statements, closing statements.
You're talking to Tom's, summation fantasies over here.
Exactly. Well, and that's really what it was. I mean, when I was at Patterson, I was,
but it worked.
A summation.
Well, right.
Exactly. And I was like, well, if we can replicate this and do it over the internet, that would be pretty awesome.
Right.
And we decided pretty quickly, in addition to not just being web-based, that we wanted to be in the cloud. And so we were on Amazon Web Services within 6 months of AWS launching. We wanted to do a pure multi-tenant solution. We thought that was going to be the next generation of technologies that would be transforming the industry. Which has proved to be true. It was a difficult conversation for about 10 years. I mean, it was tough sledding there for a while. So that's it's been kind of one foot in front of the other for the last 20 years. Oh. And we've managed to stay self-funded, profitable. We're a bootstrapped company. It's an entrepreneurial spirit that we still carry to this day, that we think is an essential part of our character. we have 500 clients on over 500 legal organizations that we work with on a monthly basis, and over 2,000 active users and on 3 continents, and and so it's been really fun, and so in the process of kind of thinking about the next phase of where litigation was going, there were a couple of things. One is that we recognized we needed a bigger boat. So we launched a data mining product that allows us to use serverless technologies and NoSQL databases and kind of these web, the cloud 2.0 technologies that are coming forward. And then looking at the way the regulatory landscape was changing, I was intrigued by the changes that were happening in Arizona and Utah regarding the non-lawyer ownership of law firms and the changes in the ethics structure. And I was fortunate to have a longtime client and a good friend, Andy Greene, who also is interested in these sort of the arcana of legal technology. And so he and I would periodically go out and grab a burger and a beer and just talk about the business and talk about what we thought was interesting on the landscape. And we started talking through this, and it was clear that we both had a common shared vision of what the possibilities were with this. And
before we really dig into those possibilities, let's switch it over to Andy for a little intro on his side, and then we're specifically going to dive into exactly how you guys came up with it and really the entire process around it.
Before we do that, let me just do a quick flashback here. One thing you said, Rakesh, really captured my interest, which was you casually mentioned your dad was doing IT work at Kirkland Ellis. What was his background? How did he get into legal technology?
Actually, I'm sorry, it wasn't IT, it was IP, intellectual property.
Oh,
my father's is a material scientist. He has a PhD in metallurgy.
wow!
And he was working with.
That's even more arcane.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He was working with Kirkland at the time on patenting some of the technologies that he'd been working on at work. So
wow.
Kirkland was doing the patent prosecution work for him.
And so what was his background? How did he get into that? I mean, what was that just education and training?
Yeah. He went to was born and raised in India in Bangalore, and got into the National Institute of Science there, and became interested in metallurgy. And so was a material scientist, and he had worked in like a precision die tooling company and some other places, but the job that took us to Oklahoma, which is where I grew up, was it was the 80s, the Reagan defense buildup, and Oklahoma City has the largest air logistics center in the world, which is Tinker Air Force Base. And so there are a lot of defense contractors around who specialize in repairing jet engines and airplanes. And so he had a job with the Chromalloy Corporation, and Chromalloy was working with Kirkland at the time. So that's how that came about.
That's fascinating. All right, I'm sorry to interject, but it just captured my interest.
Yeah,
sure.
So Andy, tell us about yourself.
Sure. Even though I can't compete with metallurgy or with Rachi.
Really?
But yeah. No, I actually started technology right out of college for a company, Anderson Consulting, which eventually became Accenture. I worked in their world headquarters working on the global decision support systems practice. So it was analytics, even though it's kind of laughable when I look back now and look at what we were calling analytics at the time. But after a couple of years of that, and deciding, well, I don't know how much future there is in technology. I decided to go to law school and entered the big law firm, and worked my way up in one law firm and became a partner, and then moved to another law firm and was a partner there with primarily a litigation practice. Even though, being somewhat entrepreneurial, I do whatever clients needed. So, Rachi mentioned .com1 at that time when every friend I knew had a startup. I learned a little about securities law.
we should clarify that Rakesh does go by Rachi as well. So we're
Yeah.
trying to differentiate in order to keep it straight here. But when Andy refers to Rachi, he's not referring to me, he's referring to the other Rachi. So just
that is true.
Yeah.
We could also shoot for Rocky 1 and Rocky 2.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I suggested that we do like Dr. Seuss, right? Rocky 1 and Rocky 2 t-shirts, but that idea was rejected. Yeah.
This is the outgrowth of having a long time relationship, but
Yes.
yes,
Right.
as Rakesh mentioned, .com one, I became a bit of a securities lawyer because of course I had all these friends who were paper millionaires, and then had to go back to work a few years later. But in any case, I was in big law for a while, founded my own litigation boutique. It's a business that I'm very proud of. We were very successful, not just financially, but we hired and trained young people. I think we had a great atmosphere. I think we did great work. And after about 6 years, we were in a point where I decided, okay, how do I scale this? Like everybody else, how do I take the practice of law and move on to the next phase? And of course, that would involve technology. And having a technology background, I figured that I knew enough where I could just go out and hire some consultants, and I could figure out what the next big thing is. Well, after spending a lot of time and a lot of money on consultants and not really getting anywhere, I figured, okay, I need to kind of take a step back and re-educate myself, because it turns out technology had changed in the last 20, 25 years a little bit. Yeah, I mean, you think you're educated once and it's good for life. So I ended up going down a bit of a rabbit hole unintentionally and going back to school very late in life and getting my master's in computer science, because when I wanted to re-educate myself, I really wanted to do it right. Which was great. I'd never gone, I'd already had 2 degrees. I'd never gone to school purely for the purpose of educating myself. I knew no one was ever going to look at my resume. I wasn't going to be applying for entry-level jobs. And it was really a blast to do that. And when I came out,
And I'm sorry, where did you do that, Andy?
At University of Chicago. So okay. I had to convince them that I shouldn't be required to take the GRE. Having, and they let me, actually, true story, they let me on.
They reluctantly did it, yeah.
Yeah, they let me on probation. To make sure, like, they said I had to show, because I was a lawyer, that I could do the math.
Prove it, right.
Well,
yeah.
So when I got out, it took a little time to figure out, okay, what do I now do with this, updated education and knowledge? And I ended up going to work for a company called Elevate, where I ended up doing a lot of legal technology consulting for large corporate departments, which was fascinating. I got to work with some of these enterprises that are just handling lots of data, who have huge budgets, who have 1,000 lawyer departments, and just see what their needs were and what they were doing, and of course participate in a lot of those projects. And that's kind of the point in the story that Rakesh mentioned, where I was thinking about, okay, what's now the next step? And he and I were having the burgers and beers, and I was very familiar with the Arizona ABS system, and that's how the conversation struck up.
Interesting.
So how did that conversation actually go? I mean, was it like, hey, we should do this, or was it
and how many beers did it take before you got
well, I mean, my recollection, Rakesh, we'll see yours, was that it was usually a stream of ideas that we would talk about. What's next? What are the possibilities? And he was already familiar with this structure with the Arizona ABS. And I remember saying something along the lines of, you can hire your own customer, because from my end of things, a lot of the problem with technology or the obstacles, I should say, with technology, is really getting people to understand how you can use it. Because it takes effort to understand technology, and it takes effort and resources to really leverage it the best. And I said, if you own your own customer, essentially. You can have someone who's focused on exactly that, on using the technology to its maximum potential. And I think it kind of took off from there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I
love
mean,
your
that's
comment about the early, I'm sorry to interrupt there, Rakesh.
no, sure.
But I love your comment about the progression of analytics and what we used to call analytics. Of course, when I first came into the business, Arthur Anderson was king of the hill. And but my freshman year in college, which was 1968, I finagled with the false ID, a job selling beer at the old Baltimore Memorial Stadium at Orioles games. And I got to not hang out with, but I got to meet some of the players. But the manager at the time was Earl Weaver, who was renowned for his tirades against umpires. But he actually had a whole series. I remember seeing it and thinking, what, this is really interesting. In the dugout, he had a whole rack of loose leaf binders where he had manually compiled information primarily on pitchers on the teams that they were going to oppose. And you would open the binder and it was like, this guy, when there's, if it's after the third inning and he's facing a left-handed batter with less than 2 out and a man up, he's going to throw a slider to the outside corner. I mean, he had all this stuff written down manually that he had clubhouse guys come. And I remember thinking later, wow, I mean, the amount of effort that had to go into doing analytics back then.
Was that before Billy Beane? Or?
Oh yeah, way more. This is 1968. Right.
Okay.
And now Tom, of course, didn't mention that, he went to college also late. He was 40 years old at the time in 1960.
But it always really amazed me. Like, now, of course, analytics is part of it. You can't watch a sporting event. And there, you can see guys making decisions based on who does what.
There's statistics that I have no idea what they even mean. That are
right.
Standard.
Right. Well, I can imagine. I can imagine what the state of that sort of analysis was at a consultancy, at a large consultancy like Anderson. It's fascinating.
Well, that's what I was going to say. One of our big pitches when we went into companies, and I remember the example, is we'd say you're a grocery store chain and you can't figure out why your sales of 2-liter bottles of Coke are going down. And ta-da, our system will show it's because sales of 6-packs have gone up and they've cannibalized your 2-liter sales. I mean, really cutting edge stuff, right? And we had spent months building out this prototype to talk about that. So we've come a long way, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys decide that, hey, we are going to actually open a law firm. You're going to be the first ones to actually go out there as a technology vendor and open your own firm based off of the rules in the state. And first of all, did you look at each other at any point in time and say, this is crazy? Like, we're really going to do this?
We still do.
Okay.
That was a conversation last had about half an hour before this.
Okay. Got it.
No, it's look.
But what are some of the challenges that you guys have seen just in terms of the opening it up and getting things going, as something totally new that really hasn't been done before? You guys really are the first ones. So what have you seen, coming from that? And then we'll talk a little bit more about what you're anticipating, but.
Sure. I think it's one thing to say, I want to have a law firm, right? But law firms do a lot of different things, right? Like it's like saying, hey, I want to go into the food service business, right? Well, okay, you got to get a little more specific. So I think, and I won't even call it a challenge, but where Rakesh and I, and honestly the entire team here, have spent a lot of time, because it took some time to get the license, and we wanted to set it up and come on board with the right team.
Is that tricky? Is that tricky getting the license?
Yeah, it wasn't tricky. It takes time. I mean, the most important decision we made is we hired an attorney named Linda Shealy, who's a nationally known ethics attorney who specializes in these Arizona ABSs. And so once we had her guiding us through it, it was all pretty smooth. But it takes time because there's a lot of background checks and you have to go before the commission and be approved.
So given that, when did this discussion start?
I'm going to put it, I don't know. You mean discussions between Andy and I?
Yeah, like when did you say, okay, let's throw a party and we're gonna do it in Arizona? I mean, how long ago did you have to start, like, actually, this is real and let's start planning? I mean, like a year and a half? Like what was that prep time like?
I think the first time the idea ever, was verbalized was maybe October, November. It
Of,
wasn't that long ago.
Really? Okay.
of 22.
Of 22, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's not bad at all.
once you
Yeah.
decided to do it, it went relatively quickly. I mean, was it an overnight thing? But
Right.
okay.
We got our
Yeah.
application on file, I think, late January, early February.
Oh,
And then we had a hearing again. I think we had the right advice. We got our hearing in late April.
so Ben, was the hearing, like, you're talking live? You had to go in and like get grilled?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
And it wasn't really a grilling because the staff does a lot of the work to lead up to the hearing. So any questions they have, they ask you in advance. But the hearing is in front of the committee, the Alternative Business Structure Committee, and they had a few questions, and then they make their recommendation to the Arizona Supreme Court.
Interesting. And were you the first?
No, the first ABS, they started granting them, I want to say in 2020, and there've been, a number. I won't say a lot, but there've been a number. I think
you're the
But
first.
you weren't hitting the beach first, so
Right.
there was at least that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
We're the first litigation technology company that has
Right.
done this, to our
Right.
knowledge.
Right.
So,
Okay.
okay, so sounds like it was a relatively smooth process. Were there any questions in regards to, the relationship between a litigation support or litigation technology company? And like, did that raise any either good flags or bad flags by the commission and by the staff when you were going through the process? I could see how, depending on how they were looking at it, it could have gone either way, looking at it from hey, conflicts perspective, or just what, is this just a pure sales play, which some people might think that it would be, which obviously it's not, but
right. Yeah, they're very, as I said, the hearing was smooth because of the preparation that had gone into it. But it was very clear during the process that is their focus, right? That the lawyers are independent and fulfilling their ethical responsibilities, and that proper safeguards are in place, and we have to do semi-annual audits, and conflicts and client confidentiality are a big part of the focus. So yes, there was a lot of leading up to that, questions and so forth that ensure that those are going to be handled correctly. Right,
makes sense. And Rakesh, from the Nextpoint or pure Nextpoint perspective, so now you've got a team that is really, able to go to a client and say, listen, we know this technology inside out, right? We are able to utilize this technology to the best of its abilities. But beyond that, what other advantages do you see in working together with? Are you guys calling it NLG or Nextpoint Law Group or?
Yeah, both.
Nextpoint
We're
Law
using
Group.
both interchangeably. Yeah,
Yeah.
Nextpoint Law Group, NLG. Well, I think for us, really, it's about helping us serve our clients more effectively, right? And one of the things that's distinguished us, I think, from other software providers or vendors, is that we have a deep pool of world-class talent who provide professional services on a per matter basis. And it's always been that's why I started the company. It's always been a key part of our business. It's how we've managed to grow the software business while staying self-funded. It's that, our professional services are so good, people would just come in to hire us for professional services. Now, that's not the case today. Today, we, every matter that we work on is in the Nextpoint software. And so our services are bespoke around implementations and operation of our software. And So, one of the ways I think about it is that, like, look, an airplane's a super useful thing, but you really need a pilot. And, from our focus on, we have a robust user base of small and mid-size law firms, which, Tom, I know is near and dear to your heart, but these are the sort of underserved portions of the market where traditional software is too expensive and too difficult to use, right? And so we've developed this real expertise and just a wonderful team of people who know how to help our clients with specific problems, not just general issues, but like, I have a production to get out, or I have a trial to get ready for, or I have an early case assessment that needs to get done, or collections that need to get done. And so these were services that we were already providing. And one of the things that we kept hearing consistently from our clients, including from Andy, who was a long time, and that's part of the reason the process went so quickly, is that we've known each other a long time. Like, we already knew, Andy was familiar with Nextpoint and our software and our people. And, one of the things that we talked about is that, like, lawyers are really busy. And if you're a successful lawyer with, a practice, you've probably got more work than you can handle, right? They don't have time to learn all this stuff. And so for us, it became a very natural extension to be able to say, hey, look, not only can we provide you with sort of the traditional lit support, services, but we can also provide lawyers. We can help you, draft pleadings and work on your ESI protocol and help you with your meet and confer process and, help you through the document review or draft a witness outline, or, not only can we, process the data for an early case assessment, we can actually help you with the underlying case assessment. And, the reaction we've gotten has been overwhelmingly positive. It is, it is, lawyers like to talk to other lawyers. They like to talk to people who speak their language, who are under the same ethical restraints that they're under, and know what the challenges are of day-to-day litigation. And so, I think that's, really that's at the center of this is client service, is being able to provide additional services to help our clients achieve successful litigation outcomes.
Cool.
So I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, Rachi.
I was going to say, Andy, what excites you about what comes next? So now you've got the process is done in terms of founding the firm. You've done the soft launch last week, which congrats on actually, great press. A lot of people seem to be really excited about what's going on. Yeah. But what excites you about what's coming up?
So this is really a culmination of a lot of things I've worked on through my entire career. When you talk about, okay, what's the solution to this problem, whether it's as a partner in a law firm or as the owner of my own law firm or as a legal technologist. And what we're doing really is, kind of embodies all those ideas that I've thought about over the years. And what excites me is just putting them into practice. Right now, we're focusing on existing Nextpoint customers who want to sign up, and we're signing them on. But there's so many things that we can do, whether it's working with law firms that do some of their work on contingency and like working with them in a more flexible manner, to really embedding the technology into things like early case assessment and portfolio analysis. And I could go on. And it's a platform to do all that, which really I haven't had, even at my own places before. I haven't had that before.
That's really cool.
So here's the question I have, and I don't know if this is played out or will play out, but so now the law firm is set up in Arizona. Are there any regulatory hurdles regarding being co-counsel with a firm, say in California, in a firm that does not have an ABS? Or is that a non-issue?
So all our lawyers will be Arizona licensed lawyer. I'm an Arizona licensed lawyer. I'll be commuting to Arizona to work out of our Arizona office. We're hiring in Arizona. We'll have consultants who aren't lawyers, but that's separate. And then we can co-counsel pretty much throughout the country in the same way that for most of my career, I was an Illinois lawyer. I'd be based in Chicago. but I'd litigate throughout the U.S.
Yeah.
And that sometimes that meant being admitted pro hoc vice. Sometimes that meant co-counseling with local counsel who was admitted in the jurisdiction. So we'll obviously be very careful to abide by all the ethical rules, but we're going to have a national practice and support firms throughout the country.
So you don't. So the ABS structure doesn't. I mean, what I'm thinking about is, do you anticipate? And if this is an awkward question, feel free not to answer it. Push back from the guild in states where the guild is notoriously self-protective, states that have really shrugged their shoulders or even pushed back at paralegals being licensed, for example. Is that
sure? No, I hope not. I mean, we've hired very qualified and respected ethics counsel, and we've put in policies and procedures. So we're going to not just abide by the rules of every state, but bend over backwards to do so. The opinions that have come out on this, support this idea that, you can co-counsel with people in other jurisdictions. Again, it's, it's if I practice in California with California counsel, or I'm admitted pro hoc vice, it doesn't, even though I'm not licensed there, it doesn't mean I'm committing the unauthorized practice of law, generally speaking. So we'll follow all those rules. We can play within the bounds and still be successful.
How about you mentioned, Rakesh, you mentioned 3 continents. How about overseas, where of course this is not an issue, where this practice is widespread in Europe? The partnership with non-attorneys is not just, it's commonplace. Right.
Yeah, they're a little more advanced than the U.S. in terms of that. Yeah.
They had more practice.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, as much as I like the idea of going to Dublin, I think for this month we've bitten off quite as much as we can do.
I was going to say, give us just a couple months and before we announce give us a few months.
I'm totally available to make those exploratory visits to Dublin to see what the atmosphere is like.
Yes.
That Notre Dame is playing Navy next week.
Wait,
but Notre Dame is playing Navy in Dublin next month. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And the Ravens are playing. I think they're playing Jacksonville in
London.
They're playing in London. So
there you go.
See,
there's all sorts of opportunities.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm sorry, Rakesh, you were going to say something.
Well,
I was going to say I went to the Kickoff Classic in Dublin last year for Northwestern Nebraska. So I'm familiar with that game.
It's a fun setting, isn't it? That's a beautiful park.
It was absolutely breathtaking. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So we are unfortunately running out of time. I'm
sorry to interrupt, Rocky, but as Russell Brand has noted numerous times, we don't run out of time. You can't run out of time. There's plenty of time. There's all the time in the world. Time is infinite. What you're saying is we have to limit ourselves. Time is limited. Sorry, we were talking about the Grateful Dead earlier, and I got in that frame of mind.
we're in the drum space portion of the show right now.
That's it. That's it.
Everyone's gonna have to hang on for a while.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to a couple of very, very quick one-off questions for you guys. I'll switch between you. We won't repeat a question between the two of you, and then we'll wrap this up. So we're going to start with something really easy, I think, for Rakesh. Chicago or New York style pizza?
You're going to get me into a lot of trouble here. I'm going to say Neapolitan. I'm going to go to Naples. I'm going to pass on both of those, and I'm going to say
political answer.
You have been working with lawyers for a long time. Yeah.
Interesting. Andy, Star Wars or Star Trek, or I'm really not that big of a geek?
Well, I am that big of a geek. And
But you're gonna go
think
the
I would go.
Expanse. Oh,
Actually, yes. But I think between those two, I'd have to go Star Trek. So,
Star Trek.
Okay.
Ooh,
yeah.
nice.
Rakesh, which band or artist, individual artist, dead or alive, would play at your funeral?
Wilco,
Ooh,
There you
nice.
loves you, baby. Yeah.
go. Andy, what's your favorite sport to play?
Well, I'd have to say used to play was ice hockey.
Oh, nice.
Man. Defense, forward.
I played
Wherever
whatever,
you can hit.
but I just loved playing. It was a lot of fun. So
Where'd you grow up, Andy?
I grew up in Ohio, but I didn't even learn how to play hockey until I got to college.
All right.
And
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
Okay, so then we'll ask the follow-up question actually to Andy. Stanley Cup, who's going to take it? Vegas is up right now, two games to nothing. They going all the way?
Cheers.
I have no idea, and I'll be honest, I don't even watch it anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, really, come on. Las
We'll go with
Vegas
that.
has a hockey team and they're playing a Florida team for the cup.
When did that happen?
Please. Come on,
Different
man.
world. Yeah.
Okay, last one, Rakesh. What's the weirdest thing that you've ever eaten?
A rattlesnake hot dog from
There
Hot
you go.
Dogs.
A rattlesnake hot dog.
Sounds good, actually.
Interesting.
It was unpleasant. I didn't finish it.
Interesting. Got it.
Chicago style or just plain?
New York style.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
On the street. Yeah. Okay. Tom, all to you.
Okay, I got one quick one also that we ask everybody, surprise question, and I'll ask each of you. Rakesh, Beatles or Stones?
Beatles.
Andy?
Beatles.
All right. Well, this conversation.
Ah,
All right. So one last question then for each of you, and I'll ask each of you to answer it, please. Rakesh, if you could spend a day with anybody from our profession, living or dead, who would that person be, and what would you do with them?
I've been thinking about this. I'm fortunate in that I feel like that's what I do every day, is that I get an opportunity to hang out with the people who I like the best in the business. And like, it's part of the reason I'm so excited that Andy came over, and like, we get to hang out every day now and talk about this stuff and do
Right.
it. So,
Right.
it's like, I feel like I'm a very fortunate person in
I'm
that.
not letting
Like,
him get away with that. Nope.
Oh, 2 minutes high sticking.
I know,
Yep.
exactly.
We can switch to Andy so you can rethink it. But
Well, here, I'll say this. I was fortunate enough to go to Zach Posner's Legal Tech Fund Summit in Miami earlier this year, and had the great pleasure of meeting Jim Wagner, who's a terrific guy. And so that's what I'll say. I said Jim Wagner.
and what would you do with Mr. Wagner? Because
Just-
he's the one who I went to the Wilco show with in Brooklyn. So
Yeah.
Oh,
There
is he
you go.
really?
really,
Nice.
Wow. Yeah.
Nice.
Go figure. Yeah. We just talk about business. I mean, that's the thing, is I love talking about business and technology. It's like I can't get enough of it. I mean, it's my passion. It's what I've done for my career. It's like I can do it all day long. So
cool.
Cool.
I would what I would do is pick his brain. That guy's really smart, and he knows a lot of stuff. So it would be a pretty much self-serving conversation. And then
There
I'm
you
sure we'd get a drink afterwards.
And Andy, how about you?
And you said living or dead, correct?
Living or dead? Yes.
Okay.
And
Probably.
the profession can be broadly defined.
Yes, we've had
Okay.
people answer Abraham Lincoln, Newton,
Socrates.
Socrates. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
I didn't know
so
that
actually,
part.
Abraham Lincoln, it was my answer.
Oh,
because I just
really?
yeah. Because I'd want to sit down with him, or maybe stand by him while he chops wood. And and ask him if all those things that supposedly had been attributed to him as saying were true, and ask him about all the stories and see what he has to say. So.
I mean, as much as I like Jim Wagner, I'd probably go with Abraham Lincoln too.
It would be fascinating, wouldn't it? I mean, because you look at somebody who we don't think about technology, but really he took advantage of the railroad, which was, you know,
Top technology.
Yeah, awesome technology for its time to shrink the country and the growth of the telegraph. So, you know, he was at the brunt of two large technology leaps that were used not so much to their advantage at the beginning of the Civil War, but you know, he was able to maneuver people into the leadership of the Union Army that did take advantage of that. So yeah, his outlook on technology, I think, would be equally fascinating. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, this has been great. Wonderful conversation. I hope we get the chance to see you in person down the road someplace and carry it on at some tech show or another.
Or New Orleans.
Or New Orleans. I mean, yeah, no stranger to. So lots of great cities that you know, Chicago, one of my favorite cities actually in the world. If and when I have business in Chicago, I always try to take the train one way or another, the city of New Orleans, for at least one leg of the trip, because it's such a great way to travel and you meet fascinating people on the train. You can get up and walk around and stretch. It's just a lot of fun. So I love Chicago.
Well, give us a call. Feel free to give us a holler next time when you're in the city.
But it sounds like Andy's not going to be there too much.
Yeah. But
I'll
we will
plan around it. So let us know.
We'll try to set something up and continue this conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate not just the time, but the insights. Great conversation.
Really.
Yeah. To all of our viewers, thanks for listening in, and we'll see you next time on the eDiscovery channel.